Cahnmann's Current Events Roundtable. Today we have a very special guest who I brought in especially for understanding how TV debates have changed the race, the changing face of American politics. And I'd like to introduce my guest, David Brimm. Welcome.
Suzanne, thank you.
And let me tell you a little bit about David. David has been in public relations years of experience, it's 28 years, right? In the corporate agency and associated sectors, with a specialization in corporate counseling,
Strategic planning.
Very good. New product services.
Bush had the same problem.
Yes. Introductions and crisis communications. And he is a three-time recipient of the Publicity Club of Chicago's prestigious award, the Gold Trumpet, and a two-time winner of PCC's Silver Trumpet. My goodness, that is really impressive, David.
Thank you. I have a lot of trumpets.
That's right. That's what it sounds like. But now, see that I just had a freeze. What is it called? What kind of freeze? A brain freeze?
Brain freeze.
Yes, brain freeze. You see that, ladies and gentlemen? And I still can go on. Anyway, David, tell us, David, you watch the debates, and we watch it much differently, and I'm sure you do as a public relations person. What do you see in the debates nowadays? What is different than what used to be, the days that we used to see it on television early on in the 60s and 70s, and what's going on that's differently today?
Well, one of the reasons it's become a real circus, I mean, it's, the Kennedy-Nixon debate was the first televised debate, and that was, of course, in Chicago. And if you remember that debate, people that watched it on television thought that Kennedy won. People that listened to it on the radio thought that Nixon won.
Oh, really?
Because Kennedy looked terrific. He had been tanned. Nixon had flown in from a fundraising appearance. He looked haggard. He had a cold. He had that 5 o'clock shadow he used to have.
Right.
So he looked terrible. But if you listen to him on the radio, he actually won the debate. So, that's the first televised debate. And now, the Republicans have had, 8, 9 different debates. And the next one's going to be the ultimate circus with Donald Trump doing it. But the problem you've had with this is politicians are no longer campaigning. They're not meeting people anymore. They're going on television instead. And they have all this cable access. So all their messages are being communicated during the debates, which is really different. They're also, the debates used to be held once you had a candidate. Well, there is no candidates now because there's 8 of them
There's
left.
candidates.
There's millions of them.
And they're always, what's the flavor of the week? It's sort of like Baskin-Robbins, isn't it?
Well, it's more of a horse race. I mean, some candidate gets ahead and they pull back and somebody else goes over. So now, it looks like Newt Gingrich is the new horse in front these days. And, of course, Herman Cain was scratched.
Right. Well, why does the media, and this is very interesting, why does the media pit all the candidates against each other? And it seems like the media is doing it. The candidates themselves are doing it. And what's interesting is, the Democrats don't have to think about what they're going to, they don't even have to spend any money on their campaign for these ads on television. All they have to do is take one of the things that one of the other people said about each other, say, maybe Gingrich says about Mitt Romney, or Mitt Romney says about somebody else, or Ron Paul says about somebody, and they just take that little segment and put it on television, and that's all they need. Why are they doing this? Why are they pitting each other?
Well, the biggest change that's taken place in politics is that today the media are essentially determining who the candidates are. And that's because the media determines who's newsworthy, and they get the lion's share of the news coverage. I mean, if you look at the way the debates are structured, usually Romney and Perry used to be in the middle.
Right.
And, Bachmann was always to the side and Cain, but as Cain's polls number started to rise, he got closer to the middle. So essentially, you have media acting as gatekeepers. They're determining who the newsworthy candidates are. And if you aren't in that first august group, you aren't going to be nominated.
Well, it's too bad because I know John Huntsman's a very smart, he's the type of person that a lot of people feel that they could identify with because he's sort of the guy on the block that you would be your neighbor. It would be your neighbor. And he's, as far as I know, a lot of people really, really like him. But they put him at the very end. And also, he does not get the same questions as the people people in the middle get. It seems like the end people get different questions than the people they feel that should get those questions. What is that all about?
Again, the event has overtaken the substance of what the debates are about. It's not even about what people say. If you asked any Republican voter the stance of the people, they have no idea. They're waiting for the next person to screw up, say the wrong thing, and that becomes newsworthy. So the event becomes newsworthy, and the moderators become the news. It's not supposed to be about the moderators. It's supposed to be about the candidates. But it's about them, because they want the next day to say, boy, did Wolf Blitzer really nail that guy. I mean, that's what they're looking for. It makes them, it increases their prestige. That's not what the debate's supposed to be about. And, and then you've got the 24/7 access, social media. It's a fishbowl these days for candidates. And, as a public relations person, my job is to put on the best image I can for my clients. And, all those candidates have a team of people doing nothing but trying to do that. But
So
it's
you mentioned
difficult.
there's a PR specialist, a media trainer, and a strategic managers. What are they? What is their
Well, obviously,
functions?
each one of the candidates goes through mock interviews.
Okay.
I mean, they ask all
It's
the
sort of
tough questions.
like I think we mentioned that's like court. When you go to court, your lawyer gives you some
Right.
tough questions because you're the prosecuting attorney is probably going to ask. So they prepare them.
Right.
So this is almost like you're saying it's the same type of preparation.
Right. My clients, I always give them talking points. And the candidates all have talking points.
Yeah.
Unless you're somebody like Rick Perry who forgets his talking points with the famous three
Right.
major things. He
Right.
forgot what they are. That's a matter of training and concentration. One of the things that I have to do is train my clients to be able more disciplined. They have to be, you can't relax. You have to be on. And Perry relaxed. He forgot what he was supposed to talk about. You can't have that happen. You have to be prepared. You have to go through the exercise. So when you're on the air, you're saying the right things. You can anticipate the kind of questions you're going to get.
Now, those were the three talking points he should have had right in front of him, even a little index card with just the three departments that he felt that needed to be removed if he was in office. And all he had to do was the word education, if that was one of them, instead of, he didn't have to have everything.
Right.
Why didn't they tell him, his people, his PR specialists, why didn't they prepare him to do that?
The PR specialist may have prepared him, but I think, you're standing on a stage, millions of people are watching, it's kind of intimidating. I think Perry just lost his place. I mean, because what happens is when you're standing there, you're thinking about what the next question might be.
Right.
You're thinking about what the next guy said. You're thinking about other things. And when you're on, you may suddenly go blank, which is what happened to him, obviously.
Right. Yeah.
But if those were the three major talking points you're supposed to make, you should remember those.
And if he didn't remember him, he could have at least talked about one and say possibly there are three of them, but let me tell you about the one that I think is the most important because I can't tell, as a candidate, they have these 30-second sound bites. And I mean, they have to say everything and they have to control the whole world in 30 seconds and tell what they feel. So maybe what he should have done was said, I have three talking points, but let me talk about one of them.
Yeah, it was too late. I mean, it's late. I mean, it killed his campaign. I mean, Perry is basically through. And, it's very rare to see somebody lose their place in an election like this just by a huge gaffe in a debate. Of course, it wouldn't be the first time. And you remember the debate with Lloyd Benson and Dan Quayle, where Dan Quayle compared himself to Kennedy.
Oh, yes, and he said...
And Benson said, look, I know Kennedy, I work with Kennedy, you're no Kennedy.
Right.
I mean, they still won the election anyway, but and then, of course, the famous potato spelling. So
Yes.
Quayle was a disaster.
Right, on television too. But what could, on these debates, now I noticed that Perry, his new campaign makes fun, his new ad, his candidate ad, makes fun of his own brain freeze.
Right.
And you said something earlier to me that he should not have put this campaign slogan on.
No, I mean,
Why is
when
that?
I tell my clients, if you've said something wrong or the story's wrong,
Yeah.
don't dredge it up again. That just reminds people about it. I mean, he screwed up, fine. Just let it go, move on to something else, and don't mention it again. But anytime you mention it, people go, oh yeah, I remember him, he really
Right.
messed up. The last thing you want to do is remind people about that debate. And by making fun of himself, sort of deprecating in those commercials, doesn't work.
So he should never put those commercials out. He was trying to make fun of his own error. And
the guy's running for the president
Yeah.
of the United States.
Yes, right.
I mean, you know, we hire a comedian if we want somebody to do that.
Because he said, well, are you hiring a president or are you hiring a great debater? I mean, look, that's what
Hiring
Obama,
both.
he was a great debater, and that's what elected him. So that's why he said that,
image trumps substance in these
Yeah.
elections. You know, Obama, let's face it, did not have a huge background in politics or in anything, but you know what? He was a great candidate. People really liked his message. They really responded to him. And, you know, and he got in. It's the same thing that's going to happen in this election. People are going to vote for people they like.
Just recently, Brett Baer of Fox News interviewed Mitt Romney, and he got all flustered because he asked him about the health care, in Massachusetts, and he got really angry about it. Can tell us.
Well, he got very defensive, and as you mentioned, this was on Fox.
Yes.
Fox
This was
normally doesn't eat their own.
Yeah.
And in this case, they really asked him some tough questions about him flip-flopping on health care.
Right.
And he really he basically went after him and said, you know what, you didn't do your homework, you shouldn't ask me questions like that. You know what, you're a political candidate, you're going to get asked those kind of questions, you should know how to answer them. And he made him lose his composure, and that you should never do. And when you're being interviewed by somebody.
Why is Fox News roughing up their own candidates? I mean, their own people. These are people that represent them. That's Fox News, and these are the people that are the Republicans that are more for Fox News. Why are they doing that to Mitt Romney?
If you look at the debates, they're doing it to each other. I mean, the Democrats are loving this,
right?
Because the Republicans are just saying all the negative things you could possibly say about each other. So the Fox is basically reflecting that by saying, you know what, we don't have a candidate yet. So we can do anything we want until we pick one. And as I said before, once they pick a candidate,
right,
the love fest will begin. Fox will continue to just say nothing but nice things about what a genius this person is.
But don't you think that the candidates that are talking, instead of saying something, well, I really don't, I think he's awful, I think what you're doing is stupid or silly or what have you, why don't they say, you know what, I may not agree with you, Mr. Romney, but this is how if I'm running for president, this is how I would do it. Why aren't they talking about themselves? Why are they putting down each other? And I've never seen this. Usually you put down your opponent.
Right.
You don't put down the hand that feeds you. I mean, that's basically they're gonna look, if they are the presidential candidate, they're gonna look for the endorsement of all these other candidates.
Sure.
But why are they doing that to each other? I've never heard this before. This is the first time that I've seen candidates run and are putting down each other on the same political team. Why is that?
They started off going after Obama, which is certainly what they should have been doing.
Right.
But after a while, the candidates were looking, you know what, we're losing in the polls. And let's face it, the polls dictate what's going on in the election. Mm-hmm. So once they start losing in the polls, the advisors are going, you know what, we got to go after these guys. They're getting all the attention, they're getting all the press, you're not looking strong as a candidate, so it's time to take the gloves off. And they did. And now you can't go back again. Once you start this process, you're stuck with it, and it keeps getting negative and negative and negative all the way, and the Democrats don't have to do anything.
They don't have to do anything. Actually, they just have to put up, like I said, they just put up all these different things that say, Ron Paul said recently, if Mitt Romney is the candidate, all they have to do is put Ron Paul, what he said about Mitt Romney, or Gingrich, or one of the other, or Perry said about Mitt Romney. They don't have to do one thing. Now, the other thing is, don't you feel that, now they're going after him because of what happened, because of his health care in Massachusetts, okay? Don't you feel that what happened in Massachusetts is really about, he did the health care for the poor people. He wasn't doing it for really the whole state. He was doing it for I think it's the 8% or whatever in Massachusetts. And if he did something, why doesn't Romney come out and say this? I think he did just recently, but he doesn't seem to defend himself in any way. And as we get older, we mature sure what and I noticed that David Gregory from he's from
Meet the Press.
Meet the Press, he puts down different things. Well, you said this 10 years ago, and you said this 5 years ago, and he shows what they said. However, people mature about things. What I said 5 years ago, I know I've changed my mind on a lot of things, and I'm sure you have too. Why don't they just say that?
Well, for the first question you asked, the job of the media is not to help Mitt Romney make his case to the American people. That's not their job.
Right.
They don't care. It's not newsworthy. Nobody really cares. So to expect the media to take the time to let him explain his position, that this foolish is not going to happen. Second of all, because of the growth of social media, the internet, you have access to these things. These news shows have become entertainment. It's not just news anymore. So you have
Millions of people are watching.
Millions of people are watching. They're cheap as heck to put on.
Right.
They get great ratings. They can sell a lot of advertising. And the debates have become about the moderator. The moderator is being ranked, not necessarily the candidates, because somebody goes, oh, but did you see what Wolf Blitzer did tonight? Boy, he really nailed that guy. Blitzer feels great. The network feels great. They have a star. That's what it's become. It's unfortunate, but the media have become the news. And that's not the way political candidates are supposed to be run these days.
It's almost like when they ask questions, it's like gotcha questions.
Yeah.
I gotcha.
Well, it started in Watergate. Woodward and Bernstein, investigative reporters. Not that there wasn't investigative reporting going on, but after that, it was open season. Plus you have a lot more access. You have 24/7 access. You have social media. You can get those stories. You have to be on guard your entire time that you're running for president, and it's unfortunate, but you know what? Negative stuff makes news. Nobody cares about people's positions. You say something stupid, you're going to be on the news that night.
I'm wondering if it started even with the Monica Lewinsky, because before they used to protect their presidents. Look what happened to John Kennedy. He was apparently going with Marilyn Monroe. Nobody knew that. And even with President Roosevelt, he was in a wheelchair.
Right.
And most people didn't know that he was in a wheelchair most of the time. And they covered it up. At one time, the media actually covered up these situations?
Yeah, at one time, media was basically partnering with political parties and with presidents. And they protected them. I mean, they could have easily, everybody knew that John Kennedy had Addison's disease and he could barely walk sometimes. You never saw him on crutches because they didn't do it. Same thing with Roosevelt. You never saw Roosevelt in a wheelchair, even though everybody knew he had polio, was in a wheelchair. Presidents like Grover Cleveland had jaw cancer, and they operated on a ship in the middle of the harbor, so nobody knew he was having it. Eisenhower had a heart attack, and nobody knew about it. But, they chose not to. Today, you get a hangnail, someone's going to cover it on the news for you. So that relationship between media and political candidates has changed enormously over the years.
And look at all the things like, say, Herman Cain, and all these women came out against him.
Well, I mean,
and that started, look at John Edwards, and so if a candidate has something in their background, and when they're vetting these candidates, how come this doesn't come out before they can go for a presidential nomination? Why aren't either the media or their PR people or whoever gets this stuff out or tells them, hey, if you have something in your past that can be discovered, because now, as you said, there's so many ways to check a candidate. You go on the internet, you Google them, you can find all kinds of things, with these candidates. Why doesn't it come out before?
They have to become newsworthy. If you're not a news story, there's no reason for them to vet you all the way. Once you become a serious candidate, that's what happened to Herman Cain. Before he was a serious candidate, nobody cared about his background. That's one of the reasons you don't have really good people running for office anymore. Nobody wants the scrutiny.
But he knew himself there was something in his background. Why did he allow himself to become a presidential candidate, knowing that, and I guess we could ask the same question of John Edwards. Right. He was running for president, right? And here he has the person that's doing all his videotaping and camera, all the pictures that are being taken is his lover.
I mean, if the presidency is the ultimate, aphrodisiac. I mean, who doesn't want to be? I don't, but I mean, a lot of people want to be president of the United States. It's the most powerful job in the world. But nobody wants to go to the scrutiny. They can't
But if
Don't
you
do
know
that.
you have something in your background,
Then you shouldn't run.
that's right. I mean, you should know that it's going to come out all over the place. And look what they do to their families. It isn't just them, it's what they do to their families. And these poor wives, they stand there and they look so, sad. It's very,
They shouldn't run. I mean, you have to know that. I mean, look what happened with Sarah Palin. They didn't vet her. After they became the official political vice presidential candidate, they said, uh-oh, we made a huge mistake with this.
Right. McCain may have won if he went with somebody like Kay Bailey Hutchinson or Elizabeth Dole or Olympia Snow. Somebody that the women that were upset that Hillary Clinton did not make the office would have probably crossed over and voted for one of the women that were Republican women that were more like Hillary Clinton.
Well, I think the Republican Party is really naive about not really understanding Americans as voters. They picked Sarah Palin because she was a woman so that she could compete against Hillary Clinton in case she was a candidate. That's nonsense. What, all women are the same?
Right.
I mean, and then they had Steele as the head of the Republican Party because he was black. Then they fired him, and now you have Herman Cain. They go, the first black presidential candidate, Republican Party. So what? I mean, people aren't that stupid. Well, we have a black president, so we're going to want another black president. I mean, you have to think this stuff through. I think the Republicans are being naive about misrepresenting the American people, what they want. They're not that stupid.
Do you think that with all what's going on, there possibly be a third-party candidate that may be running that will upset the apple cart?
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there's not Obama has lost his base. Mm-hmm. He's lost the independents. That's going to be a problem, and so far Republicans haven't really turned anybody on. So yeah, I think you possibly could have a third party.
Maybe like a libertarian like Ron Paul. Look, but the only problem is, look what happened with Ralph Nader. He hurt, when he was a third party candidate, he hurt Al Gore.
Yes, he did.
Look what happened then. And if Ron Paul runs, he may hurt one of the Republican, or I even said earlier, possibly what if somebody in the Democratic Party feels that they don't like their Obama, and like somebody like maybe Evan Bayh or Michael Bloomberg may challenge him and run as a third party candidate.
Yeah, I mean that would be suicide. I mean, let's face it. You need political parties for money. If you diss the sitting Democratic president, the Democratic Party is not going to get behind you and give you any money, which means you can't possibly win. What you wind up doing, and of course, if you lose the election to the Democrats, you're toast. I mean, you will never get the support of anybody.
But maybe the third party candidate will represent the independent party, because the independents, I feel, are maybe not getting represented. Where maybe some of the people are representing the Tea Party, some people are representing the liberals, to the left, but maybe the independents don't feel like they're being represented. And so maybe a third party candidate, most countries in Europe, they don't just have, a couple of parties. They have a lot of
Right.
parties. Look at Israel. Mm-hmm. Look how many parties Israel has. I mean, why are we just stuck with two parties?
Money. It's just money. I mean, an independent candidate can't raise enough money. Obviously, Ross Perot did because he had the money. Mm-hmm. But if you have an independent candidate without any money, you can't compete. I mean, it's cost billions of dollars to run for president now.
Well, why can't they do like Europe does? Europe gives each of their candidates $25,000, and they give them X amount of weeks. I think it's 6 weeks or so, and that's when they can use their $25,000, but they can't even do $26,000. They have to stay with the $25,000, and that's it. I mean, why do they even need that much money? I mean, if you get so much television coverage nowadays, which they go on, I don't even think they don't get paid for that.
No,
Everything is freebie over there. I mean, why do they even need to raise all that money? What is the money for?
Television.
But they get it. But they get it on these debates. They're getting it free.
Once they become a candidate, then they're going to need the money, because then the Democrats will have the money and they're going to start putting Obama out. So,
but if everybody's limited to $25,000, Obama, everybody, then everything is the same. Then a real candidate can really
talk to McCain Feinstein and see how that worked out.
Yeah.
Not at all.
But
they found all the loopholes. Now they have the super PAC committees where you can give unlimited amounts of money. Not going to work. It's just, it's just not going to work. That's the way the political system has evolved. in America. And you know, as much as you'd like to change it, it's not going to change.
So let me ask you this. We have a little bit of time. Mark Halperin just recently said, you win when you're controlling your public image, you lose when your public image is a negative. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, we talked about before, the media are the gatekeepers. They decide who gets coverage. And if they don't think you're a viable candidate, you aren't going to get the coverage. I mean, all those candidates have public relations people that are calling these producers every day saying, hey, have my candidate ad. They go, nah, not really, we're not interesting. What's the last thing he said that's important? We don't think it's newsworthy, we're not going to cover it. And that's what happens. So yeah, I mean, that's the way it works. The media determines how much coverage you're going to get, and they shape your image.
And that's why, that's exactly what we're talking about before, that's why they keep people like Huntsman and now Bachmann, they're at the end of the line. Remember Bachmann used to be kind of in the middle?
When the poll numbers thought she was doing well.
And so that isn't really fair, is it? Because we may be losing a real good candidate because the media is the person that now, when we talk about media, we're talking about the moderator of the show. Is that correct, when we're talking about media?
Yeah, the moderator becomes the news. I mean, it's like going to the theater. If you're sitting in the far left or the far right, those aren't the best seats in the house. You know where the good seats are. They're in the center.
Right.
Same thing with the political bed. If you're on either end, you know that you're not getting the respect of the media, and it's going to be a problem for you. The reason those candidates keep doing it is down the road, they're going to be able to write books. They're going to get paid for making personal appearances. This becomes for them a job search offer because they get all this publicity, they get all this coverage, people know who they are, then they can write a book and make $1 million, they can get paid $50,000 for a speech, and it's free. As you said, there's no reason for them to drop out of the race. It's not costing them any money.
Because most of our viewers don't understand it. Why like say Santorum or Bachmann or people that Huntsman, who their numbers are pretty low now. Why are they still there? Years ago they wouldn't be there, would they? They would have dropped out, or they wouldn't have had this, and yet they're staying in it. And I'm wondering, what are they getting from it? They're getting a book contract.
They're getting book deals. They're getting speaking engagements. They're going to make money on it. And since it doesn't cost them anything to be on these debates, do it. You got nothing to lose.
So you feel that they should stay there until the very end?
I think it's a zoo. I don't think they should have these debates at all. They should have had like 3. That's enough.
Yeah. But how many debates are they going to have? They're going to have one with Donald Trump pretty soon, and he's going to identify who the president's going to be. Did you hear that?
Yeah,
he's going to fire the rest of them and say, this is going to be his candidate. And if they don't show up, so several of them are not even showing up.
This is a guy that didn't want to run for president because he would have lost his television money. I mean, come on, really?
Is this a gimmick, or what is this?
The Republicans shouldn't buy into this gimmick. It is a gimmick. And, Republican Party, if you're a diehard Republican, you can't be watching this and going, this is good. This is not good. This is bad for the Republican Party. And, all this does, it makes Obama look more presidential, which is exactly what they don't want to happen. He looks like the president now. The rest of these guys look like clowns. That's not a good thing to do. It's all about image again. Obama doesn't have to do anything. He just has to continue to do what he wants to do, and these guys can just go fight each other off.
Then, as a public relations person, why aren't their public relations people saying, hey, this is not good for you. It's going to cost you the election. No one's going to take you serious. And I think I see our credits going down right now, and I see that we're coming to the end of our show.
Okay.
What a good question to end when you can't even answer the question, because it's we're out of time right now. But David, I want to thank you for coming. I think you have been really informed our audience, our viewers, because I don't think that people really understood this whole thing.
Public access is provided by the City of Highland Park and made possible in part by our sponsors. Ravinia Festival, CJE Senior Life, Gand Music and Sound,